Hey guys, Juliana J. Bolden here, MeCo TV. In studio with me today, Jay Tucker. He is the Executive Director at UCLA Anderson Center for Management of Media and Sports, and he's got a really unique perspective on Silicon Beach and its opportunities that, may lie ahead for Africans all around the diaspora. Jay?
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
You are so welcome. We have seen this tremendous enormous amounts of growth all around Silicon Beach to the point where it could be as important or more important than Silicon Valley when it comes to being ground zero for tech. Is that right?
Well, yeah, and I think there are a couple of things there in what you just said. First of all, Silicon Valley is this incredible crucible for new ventures, technology innovation and investment, right? There's never been seen on the planet, right? Short of government investment, the level of private investment that you're seeing in terms of heavy tech, software development and design, things like social media and so on, other kinds of innovation, it's just amazing. And so in comparison, you feel like Southern California sometimes doesn't stack up, right? Because the deals that get done, are not necessarily of the same size. The nature of the technologies that we pursue down here is slightly different from what they do up in the Bay Area. That said, the market down here is unique in the sense that one, we graduate more engineers than just about any place on the planet, right? In addition to UCLA, there's USC, Loyola, Pepperdine, this small school you may have heard of called Caltech, right? There are tons of schools in the area that graduate incredible engineers that have options here, and if they want to go up north or back to the East Coast or anywhere globally, they'll be able to be competitive. But secondly, we have an environment that people want to live in, work in, play in here. We have incredibly brilliant minds that have already had a number of successes on the technology side, and because of those exits, they've been able to fund this next wave of technology innovation. And we have probably the most underrated success story when it comes to entrepreneurship in United States history, which is Hollywood, right? I mean, Hollywood started as a place where people saw an emergence of a technology that allowed you to not just hear what people were doing, but see it and see it in motion. And they were able to build a business around creating stories and crafting stories using this new medium. And that has grown into this multi-billion-dollar industry that is now global. But when it started, you had people who were neither technologists, nor storytellers, nor professional entertainers, figuring out how to use this region, which can look like any place on the planet, depending on how far you drive from the coast here. You can get mountains, you can get desert, you can get forest. And they knew they could use this location to create all kinds of really cool and authentic stories and make people believe that they were anywhere, anywhen on the planet when it came to creating a new movie and later on TV series and so on. So, that kind of innovation and creativity married to the technology opportunities that we have here and the amazing talent that we've got in the region, sky is really the limit. And I think that you're already seeing with some of the companies like Snap that are doing new and cool and interesting things, that Southern California is already on its way to kind of crafting its own unique space in the larger tech and entertainment ecosystem. So it's super exciting. And if you've got technology training, if you've got management experience, business acumen, there are few places that you'd be better off in the United States than right here in LA.
Even one of the most well-known African-American backed startups, Blavity, has a stronghold here in Los Angeles now, in addition to their home from the Bay Area. Can you actually talk about then if a person is coming here for the first time from, say, another country? It appears as if Southern California might be an easier nut to crack than Northern California. Is that the case?
Well, I hate to compare the two markets because they're so different in the sense of culture, the kinds of business people in both environments and the way people communicate and network and connect with each other. They're very different, even though geographically they're super close, right? I mean, there are plenty of people who go back and forth between Northern California and Southern California and do it routinely. I would just say, and this is not only for people coming to the US from other countries, but even people in our own kind of underserved communities here in the United States who are trying to crack into the business for the first time, that one of the things that makes LA unique, or this kind of Southern California ecosystem, Silicon Beach unique, is that what you will see when you meet people, talk to them, try to better understand what's going on in the industry, is that everyone here seems to be rooting for your success, right? We are still at a point in terms of the development of tech startups and trying to build out an infrastructure that can really support technology innovation and the launching of new business ventures and so on, where if you go to a meetup on a given night, if you decide to hang out in a bar in Santa Monica or Venice, if you tell people your story about what you're trying to do, you can get a meeting, you can get advice, you can get a mentor, you can have people that'll help you kind of move down the path in a way that's very, very difficult to achieve in other markets, right? For a lot of different reasons, either because of population density or the size of the deals that get done, or the amount of serial entrepreneurs who have already had multiple exits, which creates a different kind of competition, or being in a culture that's more hierarchical, right? What you have here are people who are really deeply committed to having the region succeed. And so you find yourself, whether it's accelerators, incubators, Amplify LA is a great example, but there are many others, co-working spaces, WeWork and Cross Campus and so on, whether it's meetup groups like Digital LA, universities like UCLA, USC, you will see that as you reach out, make connections, and become part of these communities within the larger community, that folks will help you find a way to get plugged in and get started.
For the benefit of our audience and being an inspiration to those who have startup ideas, can you just briefly talk about how Twitch was the result of a pivot? Twitch was nobody woke up and decided that we're going to create the ESPN of video games. So we have to encourage our people to know your first idea may not be the one that actually makes your company.
That's a great point. And there are a couple of people who, other people who can tell that story too. So the folks over at Jib Jab, for example, if you're of a certain vintage, you remember Jib Jab from the Colin Powell, George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, This Land Is Your Land, little animated video, right?
I think my dad sent me a Jib Jab video at some point to show me how cool he was.
Jib Jab made it, right? So Jib Jab made it. They were the first, in my opinion, digital content creators to cross the chasm and become part of pop culture. But if you talk to their founders, they will tell you that at the height of their fame, they were making zero money. They had to pivot themselves. They had to turn into what was essentially kind of a digital greeting card company.
Yes.
And since then, they've launched some other things, Storybots and some other stuff. But it's an important point to realize that, you start out with a vision that may be a unique approach to solving a problem, maybe a unique technology, right? And you think you understand what the market needs and how you're going to be able to monetize that innovation and turn it into a business. And then you find yourself a year later, 2 years later, you might be sitting on half a dozen patents and still understand that you need to change the business strategy in order to actually scale up your business and get to the place that you want to get to.
There are people like your friend that have ideas that need guidance and advice to make decisions about whether to hold off or how, whether to get some kind of minimal viable product out. Talk to us about the programs that may be available for that type of help, like the one that you run or other accelerators. How do people get into those?
So being an entrepreneur is hard. It's the hardest thing to do. I don't recommend that people do it. It's not a thing. So entrepreneurship is great in just about every way except for the fact that you don't get a salary, right? So It's really hard, and
You're
you really have to
creating paychecks
believe
for other people.
right, and you have to really
Yeah.
believe in yourself and your team and your idea, and it does feel really lonely. But as I said earlier, when we were talking about what makes the Southern California ecosystem unique,
Yes.
we do have resources here: incubators and accelerators, meetup groups, as well as the universities who provide different kinds of programming that can help people go through a process to go from idea to a plan to hopefully a first iteration of a business concept or a process or a technology, and then start that journey from going, from starting as an early stage venture to getting some outside investment and scaling up, right? So you
the
can.
UCLA program is an actual school program that one applies to versus some of the independent accelerators where you bring your business planner outline and they see whether or not there's a future in your idea. Can you
Right,
what,
right.
Can you
So
talk about
if
the
you
differences between
right,
those?
so if you are talking about leveraging everything that LA has to offer, and you're not matriculated at a particular university, you want to go to accelerators and incubators, angel investors like Tech Coast Angels. You want to go to meetup groups like Digital LA. Digital LA does, I want to say, at least 3 or 4 meetups a week focused on things like blockchain, digital entertainment, startups, investment, etc. And it's a tremendous resource because it's a great way to get plugged into folks. Now that said, if you are an entrepreneur that's also a student, so if you're, if you've matriculated at USC or UCLA, then you've got a whole suite of options that you wouldn't normally have access to. And I'm sure there are programs like this at Loyola Marymount and at Pepperdine as well. But you typically will have a center dedicated to entrepreneurship. You will have venture competitions, business plan competitions, so that you, with your startup, can go out and compete and do kind of the Shark Tank thing, but to get money from the school to work on your business that you don't have to pay back and that doesn't require you to give up equity in your business, right? So that you can win a contest. You can win cash prizes, which can be $5,000, $15,000, $25,000. But most importantly, it's money that you don't have to pay back. It's money that you can win on the strength of your ideas and your vision that you can then use to start, to really push your company's vision forward, to run your operations, manage the company for, a month, 2 months, 6 months, depending on your burn rate, right? And that can be a huge resource. In addition, most of the schools like USC, UCLA, LMU, Pepperdine, Caltech will have courses on entrepreneurship, which will cover things like product design, business management, business plan development, investment, etc., which can be invaluable when you're actually trying to manage every facet of your business. That said, with the many things, the many resources that students have access to at their schools, we also, if I were an entrepreneur thinking about coming to Southern California, it's really more important to think about the totality of everything that's available, right? So
Right.
as opposed to thinking just about, for example, what you can get from coming to UCLA, although I highly recommend coming to UCLA, you should be thinking about what the accelerators and the incubators can do. The many events that are put on by the meetup groups, the advice and counsel and mentors you can find through some of the professional associations and so on. This environment is phenomenal in terms of having access to people and ideas. And so if I were a student, obviously I would start with the Centers for Entrepreneurship on my campus, as well as student clubs as ways to find out how to get plugged in and get started. But if I'm not a student and I live in Southern California, now I'm checking for the small business development centers, meetup groups, accelerators, incubators, conferences, and other resources regionally that can help you get connected to the people who can help refine your idea, help you find access to resources, talent, potentially capital down the road, and so on.
I am really interested at this point, after hearing all of these things that you have to advise people on. Your own journey must be fantastic because you're just a wellspring of consistent good ideas and resources for people. And actually, before we even jump into that, I would say for our audience, if you are not in Southern California, please do not discount your own local municipal resources, because there's plenty of towns that want to be like Silicon Valley and have there be the next Silicon whatever, Silicon this, Silicon that. Check with your local government, check with your local universities, and check with your local social scene, because there are versions of what Jay has described springing up all across the globe, let alone this nation. So to that end, how did you, jump from Microsoft to USC to UCLA and acquire all the resources that you've just, shared with everyone else?
Well, to make the long story really short, I was really fortunate to be someone that was much more interested in social impact and human rights and stuff like that, and got the technology bug relatively early in life and fell into a role at Microsoft thanks to the connections I made with, in my undergraduate experience, right? So I got a passion for what technology could do to really impact communities pretty early on, and wanted to share that with other people. And since then, I've focused primarily on education as a way to make sure that whether it's industry executives or students, young people, parents, to make sure that folks really understand the potential that technology has to transform not only the way we do business, but also the way we live. And so, I worked as a technology director in New York for a small school, shout out St. Luke's, for about 12 years, where I had a tremendous amount of contact with young people and their families, and had the chance to put together, really from the ground up, a technology program that would get the kids ready for the opportunities they'd be faced with in the 21st century. Nevertheless, in what was really the ideal situation that, for any educator, real access to the kids, great relationships with their parents, an amazing mission-focused educational institution. There was nothing I could do that would compete with pop culture, right? Not a thing. And so at a certain point, you start to realize that if you want to really influence people, then you have to get closer to the big sources of influence. And that's what got me interested in education. That's what got me to come to LA to get my MBA from UCLA. And again, just a series of kind of unpredictable events got me to working at a center actually at USC that focused on telecom, technology, and media, where I had a chance to start an event to launch a conference and a venture competition called Silicon Beach at USC. That experience, meeting all the incredible entrepreneurs and investors in Southern California, was transformative for me, and a real eye-opener in terms of understanding the opportunities that are out there, and the challenge that we have to address with respect to connecting people in underserved communities to those opportunities, right?
And seeing all of the success that you were able to drum up with Silicon Beach at USC, UCLA comes knocking and says, we want some of that over here.
Well, I think the folks at UCLA Anderson knew not only that I was passionate about tech and entertainment and entrepreneurship and innovation, but they also know that I'm passionate about UCLA, right? I'm an alum, I got my MBA there. I love that institution. There are tons of smart people there. And so it was really a pleasure to come back to do that.
Well, it's always nice to go home. I definitely, before we close, would love for you to share a few words of advice for not only Africans everywhere, but just people of color in general who hear the stories about how there's not enough diversity in tech and may feel unwelcome in certain spaces. And how do you navigate your own feelings of, hey, I might be unwelcome over here and therefore I don't think I want to go, versus, well, I'm going to take my chances and go, and lo and behold, I'm in it, and now I'm experiencing some coldness or, God forbid, some discrimination. those rough waters, how have you survived yourself, and how do you advise others who say, I don't know how to navigate this?
So, first of all, there's a difference between surviving and thriving. And I think that we need to celebrate and cherish and respect and honor all the people who have to deal with discrimination of any kind and still find a way to show up every day and be their best selves every day. It is not easy. And I think all of us have had moments in our careers where somebody's opinion, unearned opinion of us, has made it more difficult for us to get our stuff done. And it's never a pleasant thing, right? That said, for me, I have tried to maintain a goal of being like soap, right? And what I mean by that is that, if you wet the soap a little bit, no matter how hard you squeeze, the best you're going to do is get it to squirt forward, right? You're not going to crush the soap. And so, I would say that for young people, or really folks of any age that are trying something new, initiating a change in their life, trying to elevate, trying to be successful in their roles, whatever they are, in the workplace, starting a company, trying to be a storyteller. The grind is very, very difficult. It's not made easier if you have 2X chromosomes. It's not easier if you live in brown skin. That said, you have to learn for yourself the ways to protect your self-esteem, to hold on to your vision, and to remember that it's not really your job to be somebody else's equal, because other folks are not in a position to measure your journey or measure your worth. That's something that you have on the inside. You have to hold on to that and let that fire that you've got inside you carry you through moments that are not always as easy as you'd like them to be. And just trust that when you have success at the end, that success is going to be that much more enjoyable, that much more satisfying for the struggles that you had to go through.
Well, there you have it. From Jay Tucker's mouth to your ears, we are all special stuff. So make sure, if you have any type of idea, any type of passion to want to create a startup, you Google Jay Tucker UCLA, see what the Center for Memes has to offer in terms of potential direction for where you can go with your idea, your career. Make sure that if you can't get to Southern California, that you check out your local government, your local universities, and your local social scene for like-minded, tech-oriented people, so that you can all get together and lift one another up. Thank you so much for watching. It's been a pleasure learning more about tech, entertainment, media, and all things Jay Tucker and the UCLA Center for Media and Sports. To learn more about the center, visit the UCLA Anderson website. Follow MeCo TV across all social media, MECO_TV, and we'll see you next time.